Welcome, rugby fans, to Rugby 411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata. Just recently, the LA Guillotines and the San Diego Legion, two teams in Major League Rugby, the professional rugby league here in the United States, competed against each other at the world famous Coliseum in a very exciting match. I was very fortunate to witness live and in person. And in that match, the LA Guillotines, your reigning, defending MLR champions, were successful in winning that game, thus also successfully defending the Cali Cup. Now, a lot of people, this brought a lot of attention to my social media in regards to what exactly is this Cali Cup? And how come only LA and San Diego were playing for this cup? Can other teams play for this cup? Do they always give out a cup at the end of every match? And what are the criteria to play for this cup? All these questions kind of came up with what is considered this Cali Cup is a Derby Cup. And I thought it was a very appropriate timing because also recently the Six Nations competition, one of the biggest international rugby competitions in the world, just recently finished, and a lot of those matches also involve what's called Derby Cups. So I thought it would be a perfect time to create this video and help explain what is a Derby Cup. So, first of all, let's go over exactly what is the term derby. If you're not familiar with the term derby, it's used in the world of rugby. It's also used in other international sports such as football, or as we know here in the States, soccer. A derby involves two teams that are specifically rival teams. In other parts of the world, usually teams that are in the same country or the same province. Here, obviously, in the United States, in the same state, so San Diego, LA, obvious rivals. Houston, Dallas, and Austin, obvious rivals. Those teams are also in Major League Rugby. So whenever those teams specifically play against each other, those matches are called derby matches. And in the world of rugby, we usually commemorate those matches by offering what we like to call hardware or a cup to kind of make those matches special. Now, I mentioned again the Six Nations. Six Nations is, again, as I said before, one of the biggest rugby competitions in the world, involving six of the top nations in rugby, especially in Europe. You have England, you have Italy, Scotland, Ireland, France, and Wales competing every year against each other to see who is the quote-unquote the most dominant country in rugby in Europe. Now, not only are they facing off against each other to win the Six Nations overall tournament, but specifically certain matches between certain countries have sometimes a Derby Cup on the line. It depends, of course, if they're rivals. Sometimes it's commemorate certain important events, certain important characters in the history of rugby. Sometimes they just create these cups just to make those matches feel special. You have cups like the Millennium Trophy, which is competed between just England and Ireland. You have the Centenary Quake between Ireland and Scotland. Giuseppe Garibaldi Trophy, which is very famous. It's between France and Italy. Those cups can only be competed between those teams that I mentioned. The most famous one in the Six Nations dates back to 1879, and that's, of course, the Calcutta Cup that only England and Scotland compete for. No other teams can compete for these cups. Most recently, a cup was just created called the Cateda Cup. That's between Scotland and Italy. Again, only those two teams that I mentioned can compete for those cups. Also, there's rules in rugby, which is kind of unique in regards to other sports like soccer. The cup can be won, but then in order to win the cup back, it has to be won at the venue of the defending champion, the defending cup holders' venue. So, for example, say the Calcutta Cup between England and Scotland. England wins the cup. If England and Scotland face off against each other and Scotland beats England, the Calcutta Cup is not on the line. The Calcutta Cup can only be won and defended in England, thus making it a little bit more unique, a little bit harder. Kind of gives the cup holder the cup holders advantage. You have to win it in their hometown. Those rules also apply here in Major League Rugby. So in Major League Rugby, we've also started developing these Derby Cups too. The Cali Cup is one of them. Now I'd like to go over a list of exactly what these cups are. The oldest one, and again, Major League Rugby is only 5 years old, so the oldest one is still relatively new, is the Texas Cup, which obviously is between the Austin Gilgronis, at the time they were called the Austin Elite, and the Houston Sabercats. Right now, Austin has won this cup, or defended this cup, 3 times. It's in their possession. The Cuisine Solutions Cup. Now, again, these cups don't necessarily have to be between actual in-state rivals. Like I mentioned before, like with the Six Nation Cups, it can be brought on by a sponsor. It can be brought on by just let's create a special event to commemorate these two teams playing against each other to make the match a little bit more special. Give it a little bit more of a buzz. The Cuisine Solutions Cup is played between Old Glory DC and Austin. If you ever looked at the Old Glory DC kits, they are sponsored by Cuisine Solutions, so that's where that name came from. And right now, both Old Glory DC has won the cup once, Austin has won it once, and Austin has it in their possession right now. And actually, they defended it successfully in week 2 of this 2022 season, so that is still in their position. Of course, as we mentioned before, we have the Cali Cup. LA won it last year in the inaugural game, and they were able to successfully defend it this year. We have the Fire and Ice Cup, which I thought was a very cool concept. It's between Rugby ATL, which is the fire, and Toronto being the ice. Makes sense. Rugby ATL holds that cup right now. And then, of course, we also have the Champagne Cup, which it's a massive and beautiful cup, and that one is between LA and New York, which that kind of makes sense. It's definitely a rivalry that's also known in other sports. The Dodgers and the New York Yankees have a very storied history with each other in baseball. So LA and New York, Rugby New York, and the LA Guiltinis continue in rugby. Right now, Rugby New York holds that. They won it last year in the very first Champagne Cup. And then we have something called the Cold War. I'll admit I'm not too sure if that's an actual cup. I know it is a game that is played between Rugby New York and the New England Free Jacks. Now, whether or not a cup is actually on the line, I don't know. But they've played that game 4 times already. It's an even split between the two. We'll see if there's a cup because they're going to play against each other twice later on in the season. So we'll see if there's a cup on the line. I think it's just really just the name of a game and not an actual cup. But maybe they'll add a cup later on. So some dates. Now that you know about these cups, you can kind of look forward to these games. And again, it gives a little bit more interest and kind of pizzazz to these games because there's actually something on the line like hardware. And again, it's kind of cool if you visit the LA Guiltini's office. They have the Cali Cup on display. I'm sure New York has the Champagne Cup on display as well. It's just something to kind of show off in your trophy case, which is really cool. It's really cool. So again, here are some dates for this season on the next Derby Cups that are going to be played for. The week 9, we have the Texas Cup between Houston and Austin. It's, of course, played in Austin. That's where the Texas Cup resides. It's the only place where the Texas Cup can be won. So, for example, week 9, also, Atlanta and the Arrows play against each other. Theoretically, for the Fire and Ice Cup, no, because this is being played at Toronto, so the Fire and Ice Cup is not on the line because it's in possession of Rugby ATL. Likewise, week 10, the following week, Rooney plays LA, but in LA, so again, the Champagne Cup is not on the line, and unfortunately, they only play once a year, Rooney in LA, so the Champagne Cup will not be up for grabs until possibly next season. And again, week 17, though, is when the Arrows visit Rugby ATL, so that's when the Fire and Ice Cup will be on the line. We have a unique situation on week 18 where we could have a Texas Cup rematch between Austin and Houston if Houston wins the Texas Cup in week 9. Then they'll defend it at home because Austin goes against Houston at week 18, the last week of the season. And week 12 and week 18, the Free Jacks and Rooney play against each other in the Cold War games. Don't know again if the Cup is on the line or not. But if they will, they get 2 chances, week 12 and week 18, to play against each other. So those are Derby Cups for those who are intrigued and wondering what exactly it is. I hope I explained it proper enough so you can understand. Again, I think it's a fun idea. It's a very unique way to make rugby a lot more interesting. Kind of something that, again, that rugby does by itself. You don't see that in basketball. You don't see it in baseball or football. I mean, you have rivalry games, but no real trophy on the line. So I think that's kind of cool. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. Let me know what cups, if you see a list of teams of the Major League Rugby, let me know what cups you'd like to see in the future, what derby, what kind of rivalries you think should happen later on. Some people have wondered if Seattle and San Diego, because they have a pretty storied rivalry already with the postseason, maybe they should be a derby cup between them. Now that Dallas has been established, will Dallas pick a fight between Houston and Austin? Austin and LA, both being owned by the same owner, Adam Gilchrist. Giltinis, Gilgroni. Could there be a Gil Cup in the future? Interesting things like that. Rooney and DC, Rooney and New England. New England and DC, that is New Orleans and Atlanta. That's always been a storied rivalry in the football world. Maybe in rugby. So let me know future Derby Cups, and of course, the names of the cups are always going to be interesting. I think the Cali Cup is not a bad name, but it kind of lacks a little bit of originality. So let me know if you can think of any Derby Cup names that you think would find interesting. And again, thank you very much for watching my video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the pitch.